This week's episode is sponsored by Audio-Technica.
You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. My name is Alan Weitz.
And I'm Jill Waterman.
And as always, don't be surprised if our audio engineer, Mike Weinstein, hops on the mic with a question or a comment or two. You never know. How many of you have engaged the services of an attorney to assist you in some aspect of your photo business, or dare I say it, represent you in a legal dispute? And how many of you don't have a lawyer in your back pocket but wish you did? If either of these questions made your ears perk up like a Welsh corgi, a box of donuts says this show is for you. On this week's podcast, we're going to delve into key legal aspects of the photo business, from establishing a business entity to employing contracts to intellectual property concerns of copyright, releases, and more. Our guide for this rocky road is photographer, entrepreneur, business strategist, Ironman triathlete, and practicing intellectual property lawyer, Rachel Brenke. Since we're talking legal matters here, before proceeding further, we need to clarify that any points raised or discussed in this episode are solely for educational purposes and should not be construed as legal advice. As Rachel likes to say, she is a practicing lawyer, but she's not your lawyer. And as for the rest of us on the show, we're not really photographers, producers, or podcast hosts. We just play them on TV. So this is all make-believe. That said, Rachel, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, happy to be here.
It's good to have you on here. Now, this is an interesting thing. I'm interested in the show because as a working photographer, I've had several episodes over time where I had to employ legal help to straighten out problems having to do with photography and rights of photographs and who owns the photographs. We'll get into it a little bit later. So my first question is, you offer legal support to photographers on a website called TheLawTog. How did you come up with that name? Is it a combination of lawyer and photographer or something about that? Tell us a bit more about your background in photography. Do you have a specialty, what you're known for, and answers to all of the above?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I'm going to admit something that I've not admitted on any podcast anywhere, and I might regret it after and have you guys censor it out, but I didn't really think through the name. I just knew that I needed a name that stood out. I needed a name that was going to be legally protectable because I didn't want anyone else to have a similar name. And I combined law, like you said, with lawyer, and tog, photographer. Well, now, of course, I have an Australian audience, and tog is something completely different than photographer. And it's just, I can't change it at this point. We've come too far.
Well, this is an immediate question I have. Is tog in Australia something that you don't want to say in polite circles?
I think it's flip-flop, or it might be. I'm not sure. But I just know it's not photographer. When you say tog, I think they're referring to flip-flops or sandals. And so when we say it and I see Australian photographers come in our group, they're like, I'm confused. Are you legal for sandals? And I'm like, I mean, I could be if you want me to.
Do you know there are about 100,000 people right now Googling tog? I want you to know that. While we're talking, they just, you'll make my phone here and see what this means.
But you know what's funny is, like, I never really expected to take on the persona. I just thought it would be a brand name for the website. But I've even gone to non-photography conferences where I've gone to like CrimeCon, BloggyCon, these other places, and I'll walk in and just have just my name. And people will say, oh, it's TheLawTog. And I'm like, how? Like, how do you know that? It's just funny. So, like, obviously I did something right with the name, even if it does turn my face a little red sometimes.
Don't question it. It works. It's okay. How did you come to getting into photography law? Because that really is a niche.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll give you the abbreviated version. I've been in my own businesses prior to going to law school, went to law school. My husband was deployed in and out to Iraq. And at the time, we needed the money. And I loved photography. I had gotten, it's like the typical story. Mom gets a camera for Christmas. My husband said it's the worst present he's ever given me, but it's also the best. And so I developed my own photography business during law school for multiple reasons. One, we needed the money. And then also too, in law, it's very like, I don't know what side of the brain, but it's just very heavy analytical and reasoning and all of that. And I needed something for my creative outlet. And I still wanted to be a business owner and an entrepreneur. And so all during law school, I was doing my photography business. I kind of dabbled in all different types. I did weddings and didn't really suit my schedule. I ended up moving into like women's specific photography, boudoir, things like that, glamour. But by the end, it was just funny. Like within like a year and a half, law school was 3 years. Within a year and a half of being in, I was getting all these questions from photographers. How do I do this? How do I do that? And at first I was like, that's not atypical. I was already kind of getting a lot of questions of how do you set up a business, et cetera. But these were very specific to the pressure points and the frustrations that photographers have, like copyright and contracts. And by like the 2.5 year mark, I was like, there's something here. There's not a lot in the market. I did not set out to do this. And by the time I graduated, TheLawTog was born.
Wow. Interesting. So you just sort of stepped into the whole thing and it all happened around you. And it is a limited range. I know of just a handful of people who deal with this specific subject of law.
Yeah. What's interesting is I always tell people I'm a very unique species because you can find a lawyer that's good. You can find an entrepreneur that's good. You can find a photographer that's good. But when you have the three together, you're really able to have the perspective, not just of like the legal basis, but also like the business mentoring and coaching, and also like the real world life perspective of what it's like to be a photographer. And that's really what I put myself out there because I understand exactly what y'all are going through when you talk to your clients about contracts or anything. So I'm not just some lawyer sitting like an ivory tower somewhere just spewing out legal stuff. I understand the real world practices of what you're dealing with.
Now, that said, what percentage of the photographers that come to you have a realistic understanding of what the legal parameters are of what they are doing? Do you have people coming into you and they're just totally off base as far as what they believe their rights are? Or are most photographers fairly well educated in what they should be expecting legally? What's your take on that?
Yeah, we need to quantify that a little bit. So I have TheLawTog, which is the website of the go-to legal resource for photographers, contracts, education. It's kind of a good bridge between not knowing what you don't know what you don't know, and a lawyer. Then I have my law firm that also services photographers. And so on the TheLawTog side is very heavy in what you just said. You don't know what you don't know, getting the information, like, trying to drink from a fire hose, trying to put that information out there. But I do find that the majority of photographers that end up coming over to my law firm have already gone kind of through the TheLawTog. They've gone through the paces. They understand that contracts are needed. They may have had an issue or like copyright infringement has happened. So on the firm side, they're a little bit more knowledgeable. But really the TheLawTog, the goal is to get the information out there and educate everyone. And so I always approach it. And I think this is true. I mean, anecdotally, I don't know the numbers, but I would say 95% of the people that come to the TheLawTog may have some understanding, but it may be a misunderstanding or nothing at all. And that's really what we work to kind of educate them on the right path.
And once they go through all this and actually come to you, you could actually have an intelligent conversation, is what I'm gathering.
Yeah, what's funny about that is, I often think about, photographers that get into this. You have to think about, we're in an industry that's really unregulated. Like there's no required certification. There's no requirement for contracts. There's no requirement for all these things. And so it's a low barrier to entry. At this point in life, what is it, 2023, you really only need an iPhone. Please don't skewer me for that. But you just need to have some way to take photographs, whatever that mechanism is. And so there's no requirement of knowledge. There's no requirement of anything at all. And it can lead to issues. And that's kind of where the TheLawTog comes in, of trying to educate and help. Actually, right before I got on with you guys, I was on the phone with another attorney across the table from me in a negotiation. And we were joking that, and it's actually kind of a sad joke, that when there's issues, the only people that really win are the attorneys. And I say that to my clients and those at the TheLawTog all the time. I'm like, I don't want you to pay me to clean up your stuff. I make more money that way, but I would rather you pay me like 1/10 of that for you to get your stuff in order, get your knowledge, and focus on your clients, focus on growing your business and not padding the pockets of some lawyers.
Good point.
Very good point.
So, Rachel, You're licensed to practice in Virginia and Texas,
Mm-hmm.
and you can assist with intellectual property matters nationwide,
Mm-hmm.
but you can only assist photographers with contracts in 15 states. What do those states have in common, or what's different about the others? Where you're licensed to practice, how does that factor in?
It's a great question. So it's just some history. I kind of mentioned earlier, my husband was active duty. I also grew up as a military brat. So I've always had a heart for military spouses and dependents having to move all the time. And it's very difficult if you've ever had to pick up your business and move it, wanting to know what the laws in the new state are, being in compliance and just wondering about all that. So when I opened up my law firm, one of my main goals, and I still do this actively, is trying to acquire as many other licenses in other states that I can. But I also want those attorneys to understand my perspective. I want them to understand what photographers go through, trying to balance life and business and all that sort of stuff. So what I have set out on a journey for the last 13 years at this point is trying to get relationships with at least one or two attorneys in every single state for state specific stuff, such as contracts. That's a huge thing for photographers, right? They set expectations, they legally protect them. Copyright and trademark, I can do that on a federal level. It doesn't really matter where I'm licensed. I'm not interested in acquiring 50 licenses for myself. And so I just am trying to acquire attorneys that can assist in all those states. And right now we only have about 15 to 17 consistent attorneys that support us. But I cultivate one of the key things that I do on the back end that a lot of people don't see. I'm always going to different organizations and going to events and conferences, making connections with attorneys in different states that also have the same mindset as me so they can serve photographers and utilize their license when there's a contract issue or just drafting a contract in a specific state. So you need to have an attorney that's licensed in your state. And that's the gap that I'm trying to fill, especially for military spouses or transient photographers. They may move every couple of years, especially since pandemic. We've seen this whole get up and go type of mentality. But as you go to different states, the contract law and different laws differ. And so the other goal is continuity of legal help. You don't have to be jumping from firm to firm. You would just simply go from Amy over to Sydney within my firm. We all have the same mindset. They are trained by me. We're all on the same page. We all understand photography. And that's my major goal of trying to create that network under me.
How does your organization differ from organizations like the AIGA and ASMP that offer legal advice for members of these organizations? Years ago, I took advantage of ASMP and AIGA helped to resolve a problem. And I remember it was just sort of like 5 or 6 members that sat down. They were arbitrating all things. How does it differ from what you're doing?
So actually, what I typically find, whether it's ASMP, AIGA, PPA, they do have attorneys on staff. Oh, I don't know how to say this. They're in a way to give enough information to guide you, but not enough to really give true legal advisement. And we actually get a lot of spillover at my law firm, and to TheLawTog as well. We get a lot of spillover from ASMP in those places because their legal services they can provide stop at a point. Whereas for me, having the actual license and being able to engage people, we can continue that on. So let's take a copyright infringement example. Any of them can kind of give you enough information of, these are the good next steps that you could take. And the TheLawTog does the same thing because it's not a law firm. It's a separate site for my law firm. Can say, here's the next steps that you could take. Whereas when a photographer gets confused or not sure, or those steps didn't really pan out, that's where my law firm comes in and we're able to say, okay, we can do this for you. Or here's the specific evaluation to your specific situation. It's kind of multi-level. When you're looking at these high-level organizations, it's great to have that information. It's a great value for creatives and photographers, but it can only go so far. And we kind of pick up the baton, so to speak, when they're at the limit. Mm-hmm.
Got you. Now, aside from copyright protection, I imagine that is a very big topic and probably takes up a lot of the cases. Aside from that, what are the kind of issues that photographers come to you when dealing with photography and the law?
Oftentimes it's just like, how do I set up to be a legal business? Because they're afraid here in the US, like they're afraid of the IRS, they're afraid of the government, they don't want to get penalized, they don't want fees, which I understand. So legal business setup is a big one. And then contracts is really close behind. Again, we're in a very unregulated industry, so nothing requires us. There's not contract police other than me running around saying, why don't you have a contract? And so you don't have to have one, but it's being able to fill that gap of explaining that contracts are customer service tools, they're expectation setting tools, and legal tools. So I think those are the two biggest ones. Legal business setup, making sure they're checking the boxes so they don't get in trouble, then two, having contracts in place to protect them.
Understood. Now, speaking of contracts, you refer to contracts as being both the framework of a working agreement as well as a bargaining tool when needed. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because that kind of got my attention.
Oh, I love that you picked up on that. But I really do, and it's not just because we sell contracts of the TheLawTog. You can go anywhere else. I just want you all to be protected no matter where you go. Contracts really are a center point of any sort of business transaction. It just translated contracts equals communication, right? Which is where the biggest amount of issues arise from is either ineffective communication, miscommunication, lack of communication. And so contracts, we're in 2023, contracts are not foreign to people. When you loaded your iPhone, you agree to how many end user license agreements. Those are contracts. So the clients that you're having, they're not foreign to this concept. But it can be often scary as a business owner of, oh my gosh, I'm using contracts. But if you just reframe your mind to think, this isn't so that I can beat my client over the head with. And when I talk to photographers, I talked to one earlier today about a breach of contract issue. The very first thing I said, I was like, we're not here to beat your client over the head with it. We're here to use it to work to resolve the issues. And actually, you can even resolve an issue with your client just by having a contract. You have the four corners of that document. Just visualize the document. What is written there, as long as it's lawyer drafted, it's written in a way that can be understood, everyone's on board with it, everyone agreed with it, it can resolve so many problems before they even become problems. And it can resolve issues before you even have to go to a lawyer. Out of probably everything that I do legally for photographers, I cannot express the importance of a good lawyer drafted contract enough.
I would say that you could compare that to something I always refer to, and that is that when it comes to being creative, I know a lot of photographers and creative types get all uppity and jumpy when they're hired to do a job. And there are a lot of parameters. There are a lot of, you got to have this, you got to have this, you can't do that. And all of a sudden they find that they've got all these rules that they have to live with while being quote unquote creative. And one of the things I got from one of my teachers early on is that that's one of the best things you could have when you go into an assignment is to have limitations, because those are your starting points. Once you know what you can do and cannot do, then you got to figure out, okay, these are my limitations. What can I do now? And it's the same thing with the contract. Once you have a framework to work in there, it eliminates a lot of questions and eliminates the possibility, or reduces the possibility that you're going to go off in a direction that is just wrong because it's not what was required.
Oh, I love that. Especially, I know that oftentimes as portrait photographers, we're the ones offering the contract. So we're setting the tone, we're leading the example. But when you were talking, I was thinking about being on a commercial shoot. Oftentimes when you're working for major publications or in the tourism industry or whoever it is that's hiring you, very much so. Like being put in a box can help stretch you more. And I think sometimes as creatives, we buck that mentality. We're like, no, we want to do what we want to do. But at some point, and this is not even contracts, this is just in general as being a creative, if you don't have restrictions, you don't have parameters, you don't challenge yourself, you're not going to grow. You're actually going to put yourself into a box without realizing it.
Yeah. Yep. Limitations create friction, and friction creates creativity.
So, Rachel, with a new photographer who's new in business and looking to set themselves up as a business entity rather than just a sole proprietor and establishing contracts, what would you recommend doing first? Would the contracts come before actually establishing a business entity if somebody's just brand new to setting up a business, or is the business entity most important to focus on?
This is a tough question, but let me kind of translate it into an example of you're kind of asking me, do I buy the camera body or the lens?
Exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
you need both. And
Mhm.
so I always talk about the legal tripod. I coined it. It's cheesy, kind of like the TheLawTog name. But for real true protection, right? For us protecting ourselves as photographers, we want to look at the entity. So in the US, it's like choosing an LLC or a corporation because we want there to be a division between us personally and our business assets. So if there's ever an issue, which there's going to be an issue at some point, and your client or a vendor or a debtor or whoever is going to come for you, you don't want them to touch your personal assets. And you don't have to have a mansion in the hills of California with a pool in order to have assets. You simply could just be an individual that has an income earning potential, and that's an asset. And I wouldn't want my income to be restricted because somebody had an issue. So the first thing is choosing an LLC or a corporation. Second one, we've talked about contracts already. Contracts is just another layer. And then also having liability insurance. And these three, this tripod, I love to actually visualize it. Think of the movie with Will Smith, Independence Day, like the alien spaceship is coming in and they're shooting at it and the force fields comes up. That's kind of what I want you to visualize these three pieces to be. We want to insulate ourselves and our time and our money and our energy and our liability as much as possible. And so our clients are on the other side of the force field. So we've got three different force fields at this point that they have to get through before they can ever get to us individually. And that's kind of really the whole goal. I didn't answer your question because I don't know how to say what is better or not. But I will tell you, when I first started out in business and then also in photography, I was on a really restricted budget. We did not have a lot of money. And I understand being in the position of, oh, I can't afford this. And that's kind of where the TheLawTog comes in, shameless plug. But I understand like sitting there going, I don't have the money. How do I do this? Well, first I'll tell you, you don't have the money. If you don't have the money to protect it, you don't have the money to clean it up if there's an issue. But I still understand tangibly sitting there going, I scraped together just to get my camera and my lens. How am I going to get the next best thing? Oh, if I have to choose one, I would say a contract. Oh, am I going to regret saying this? I would say a contract would be the most important, and then LLC second, just because it gives us the benefits, not just of the liability protection, but all the things we talked about as setting expectations and everything like that.
And would a contract be a little bit easier or wouldn't take as long to establish?
Well, I mean, it kind of depends. Like you can log on and get your LLC and corporation set up relatively quickly. And then like with the TheLawTog contracts instant download. So it's kind of a wash between the two. But yeah, I just feel like if any of you all had a problem, and I love to help you, I'd prefer you didn't have problems, but I would love to help you. I would rather you come to me as a sole proprietor with a contract than an LLC with no contract, so long as it's a good drafted contract, right? If it's a crappy contract, then that's not my answer. But so long as it's a good drafted contract and you have a problem, I can do my best I can to insulate you from liability and mitigate the money that you would have to pay out if there's an issue.
Good point. That's great.
I've never been asked that before. You kind of really put my feet to the fire on that one.
Yeah, well, we like to keep our guests on their toes.
I enjoy it.
So you mentioned that it's possible to be marketing illegally. Can you elaborate on that? What kind of issue would it be and what would the consequences be for someone?
Yeah, so there's actually a variety of things. And I was just having a conversation with a client about this today. I mean, you could have the gamut of, I don't know if I'm going to open up this box, but there's photographers out there who don't feel like they have a solid portfolio. So they'll try to snag other photographers' photos to use, which is copyright infringement, but it also can be deceptive trade marketing. But really more to the point, I think, of what you're asking me of what I've really shared before online has been, incentivizing testimonials, right? If you pay for a testimonial, you have to divulge that information, disclose it every single time that testimonial is used. So if I go to Susie, my bride, and I say, I will give you an album in exchange for a testimonial, technically, every time I use Susie's testimonial, like the fine print, you hear it on the commercials all the time at the end where the guy talks really quick. Oh, these are paid actors and blah, 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 blah. That's their disclosure. That's what they're fulfilling. And so testimonial is a big one. Referral fees, if you give referral fees, especially wedding photographers with vendors, that is supposed to be disclosed. And the reason there's a disclosure for either a testimonial or referral, the person that's being referred needs to know that information because it might sway their view of the legitimacy of that referral or testimonial, right? So let's use TheLawTog as an example. We have affiliates that go and share about us. And I tell them, you need to share you're an affiliate because you're going to get a portion of sales if, give a link to someone and they're going to buy from us. Well, obviously, when you see that link, you might take pause to the recommendation when it has a disclaimer versus if it doesn't. And so we just as being on the up and up, it's consumer protection. And so marketing illegally for me is really all about being honest in marketing and being fully transparent. And so those are kind of the biggest things between the portfolio usage of your own photographs, the testimonials, and referral fees. There's more, but those are the big ones.
Cool.
And everybody just wanted to get an icon and go out and take pictures and make money. You're popping all these bubbles today. I don't know.
I know. You know what? I always joke that when I go to events, I am like the Care Bear, which gives you a context to my age. I am the Care Bear that has like the little gloomy cloud on its belly. I'm just like a dark cloud. But I really try to be a little bit more like I really am where you guys are. But I'm so passionate too about it because I know what it's like to not know what you don't know, not have the money, wanting to invest, wanting to grow, and then being hit from all sides of all these different things that can happen. And that's my entire goal. Whether TheLawTog exists in 10, 15 years, but that's kind of like my life's mission, whether it's in photography or anywhere else, is I love so much having my own livelihood and my control of mine. And I want everyone else to have the same, and especially photographers, because we are such a unique industry and it's unregulated and we have such an impact. Like if you think about it, you look around in marketing for any business in the world, what do they have? Photography. They have photography. They have to. Like there's very few businesses that don't use photography for their marketing. We are so pivotal in so many areas.
Yeah. I can't think one company, Letraset. You just had me thinking when you say, yeah, Letraset, they just do typefaces. Okay. But
I mean, maybe, but they're really successful. But really though, like if you just think about it, we are the crux of everything. And, I just think back to actually in high school, for me, when I grew up, it was very much, you're going to go to college, you have to get like a business degree, which I did not. I'm criminology, and I don't even do that now. But it was very much, arts is not a thing. But then I look around at my age and I'm going, do you know where I spend most of my money? On arts. I was actually at a show last night and I was watching it and I was thinking, I wouldn't be watching the show and enjoying my life if people hadn't been committed to the arts and enjoying that. And so I encourage anyone that is feeling, this business stuff of photography, all this legal stuff sucks, blah. I get you. Like I hear you. But there's something so special about being a creative and putting it out in the world. Just do it. God, just do it. Just do it.
I love it. And I think that's a perfect line to say, let's take a short break here. And when we return, we're going to switch gears and talk about intellectual property matters, such as copyright and releases, all this fun stuff. And we might even throw in a question about that dreaded acronym, AI. Stay tuned.
Designed with content creators in mind, Audio-Technica combined the studio quality of their ATH M50X headphones with the clarity of their 20 series microphones to create the professional ATH M50X STS stream set to fit the headset needs of serious gamers and streamers. Whether you're podcasting, gaming, or on a studio-based production, the ATH M50X STS stream set provides outstanding build quality and field-tested audio performance, and it's available in XLR and USB versions at bnh.com. Learn more about Audio-Technica products at bnh.com using the link in our podcast show notes.
Okay, we are back with Rachel Brenke, and we're talking about all things legal, copyright laws, and all the other stuff that goes along with being in the visual arts field, being photographers in our case. I want to start this part of the conversation with a little story that I might have even thrown out on another episode. And to me, it's a classic when it comes to talking about model releases and how the law reads and how it's actually applied. And about 20 or 25 years ago, there was a cover of the New York Times Magazine section, the Sunday magazine. And the lead article had to do with a glass ceiling for black executives on Wall Street. And the cover was a very striking photo. It was a black and white photograph of an African-American man, well-dressed, looks like a Wall Street type, and he's crossing a street. He's half turned. He's almost looking at the camera. He is sharp and very recognizable. He's in focus. Everything else around it is blurred. The people moving around. It's a very striking photograph. And basically the gist of the article was, are African Americans hitting the glass ceiling on Wall Street? Apparently a lot of people read it. And another person who read it was the guy whose photograph was on the cover of the magazine. And he was totally unaware that that photograph was ever taken. He never signed a release. And even though the photographer went through his photo agency, I forget which agency it was, this guy sued. And he won against the New York Times, the photographer, and the stock agency. Each of them had to pay up because he said, this is not my story. I am very happy where I am. I have been treated very well in my organization. And this just put me in a very bad light in my industry. And I did not see this coming. And he won. Any thoughts about that?
Model releases, well, there's a couple of things to unpack here. I'm going to assume, you may have said this, is that the photo was taken in a public area.
Yes, it was. Yes.
Yeah.
Very important point. Very important point.
And yeah, incredibly important, because there is no expectation of privacy. And, I'm not going to want to take this on a dark turn, but we had an issue personally. We were on a plane and this guy was taking pictures of one of my kids. And I was irate. I'm like, this is gross. I don't know what the photo's going to be used for. Anyways, long story short, security, when we get off the plane, was like, there's nothing we can do. You're in a public location. And I knew that. As a lawyer, I knew that. But as a mom, I was like, no. And so it just, that's an egregious example that doesn't apply here. But you just have to understand that in a public area, you don't have an expectation of privacy in the US. However, with the example that you just outlined, just because you don't have privacy, just because there's publicity, does not necessarily mean that you don't have protection over how your personal publicity, the recognizable face, your name, your reputation, anything related to that, doesn't mean you don't have control over that. And I think that's kind of where you're going with this, is the crux. Like at the end of that, you say, his whole story didn't equate, it tainted. You didn't say tainted, that's my own application, but that's kind of how I felt when you were talking, that his reputation was tainted because of the story that was attached. So yes, on its face, the photographer was probably in the right to photograph in public. Fine, great, no expectation of privacy. It was the step of them taking it and putting it attached to a story that could impact our publicity. And it depends on the state that you're in, right? I know there's some states that don't have this expectation of publicity. There is no control over it. We are seeing changes with that. So I put a little asterisk on that statement if you're listening to this in the future. We are seeing changes of that with the internet and the way it moves. Just be mindful, not just this example, but everything that we talk about. The law is so archaic, is so far behind. Like we're moving at light years in technology, and like all the laws are still sitting on the Oregon Trail. Like it's just taking so long to catch up. It doesn't justify it, but just to give you some context, there are states that still believe that if you're in public, that's it. That's the be all and end all. But obviously in this situation, he was able to make the case of, I have my own publicity, my own reputation, there's damage to me, and he was able to prevail, which is incredible. That's awesome. And I think that's a really good win. I wish we had seen more continuity with that, because I've seen it go back and forth depending on the state and the different, it's always dependent upon circumstances. But so for me though, with photographers, and I get this question a lot with street photographers, I always tell them, and you guys probably can tell by now through this episode, I'm very much be on the up and up. So you don't have to worry about cleaning up an issue later, and you can continue in on your business. So if you're doing like street photography, or if you're in portrait photography, having the right model release that speaks specifically to the publicity rights is attached to a person is incredibly important, because you could avoid all of this right here.
Right.
There's one other issue related to this that I want to ask about. The fact that it was on the cover of the magazine rather than inside. Doesn't that make a difference?
I mean, it could. It's a little different, but like on copyright infringement type of cases, that's something we really drill into. Like, is it printed? Is it digital? Is it on the front? Is it on the back end? How many times it was used? How was it used? Was it altered? So yes, I agree on this point. Like, it also makes a huge difference. And I bet if I pulled the case, that would be part of what they cited for the damages for this guy when he filed, of because it was on the cover, it was even more enhanced or increased damages. He may have still prevailed even if it was on the inside. It just may have been lesser damages.
Yeah, it's what put on a cover. You're waving a flag at that point. There's no way. No one's. Hell, look, I'm on the cover of the New York Times Magazine section. I didn't notice that. None of my friends called me to tell me. No, that's not happening.
Well, what's funny about this? I actually did Ironman World Championships back in 2018, and I basically signed away everything to them, right? They they did all this publicity stuff. My picture, there's a really good finish line picture. It's one of my favorites. I'm not a very emotional person. And so when I crossed the finish line, I was very tired and I didn't expect to see my family there. And like the picture is my arms thrown out, my eyes are wide, and I'm almost crying and my kids are running at me. It's a really like iconic picture, but I have seen it used and I monitor it because of my publicity. I know I'm a public figure. I want to make sure that whatever the photo is used for, that is in a positive light. Luckily, it's been managed in such a way, they have honored that it has been used in very positive lights connected to like moms in triathlon, moms in business and that kind of stuff. But if it did go wayward, I would probably take the same approach as this guy and be like, hold on a second. Like, that's not what I'm about.
So your Eden Law website features a prominent mention of copyright cases on the homepage. Generally speaking, how many inquiries do you get per month from photographers with issues concerning copyright infringement?
I'm chuckling because this is one of the top KPIs that I stay on top of. It's a lot. And I would have to pull our most recent one. We're recording this mid-June. Last I checked, just for June, it was about 90% of our inquiries just in the last 15 days have been connected to copyright infringement.
Wow.
And I would say out of that 90%, 90% of that is probably photographers. Sometimes I still get copyright infringement for non-photographer related, but yeah, so it's the bulk. Like the majority of my work is copyright infringement because it's not, if it's going to happen, it's when.
So you also asked the question on your website, do you have a copyright case, which links to a submission form for evaluating potential infringements and the possibility of setting up a paid strategy session with one of your staff. Of all the inquiries you receive, what's the most common reason for turning someone down or saying that the infringement isn't strong enough?
The most pressing reasons that I would not take a case would be either, I've had this happen, the potential client, they were a client at the time, went public about it, and it diminished the potential returns. Once you go public, and this is why in the TheLawTog group on Facebook, we are very heavy on don't share third-party names, do not give enough information. I'm trying to preserve your legal right because, and I was just talking about this with a client today, I'm like, we cannot discuss this with anyone because one of the leverage points to a resolution is going to be threat of publicity. We may never have to get there, but it's a card we can play. But if you play it before I'm able to play what I need to play, we may not recover anything.
Right.
And the reality is that the majority of photographers that come to me and fill out this, do you have a copyright case? They have not taken the steps either because they don't know what they don't know, or they don't see the value in paying for it, of registering copyright with the Copyright Office in the US. And that being said, I think your follow-up question will be, well, what are the majority of cases that you get? Are they unregistered or registered photographs? The majority of them are unregistered. We're still able to get a return, but we have to look at it completely. So if I have a situation where we have unregistered photographs, maybe it's been a long while. That's another reason why I would turn it down. If it's been 2 or 3 years, the other party's going to know there's no threat of lawsuit because we're almost out of statute of limitations at that point. Or it's this idea they've already gone public. If I have a combination of all of those, because I don't know, I'm like the worst salesperson ever. I will take your money, but I'm going to be honest with you. Like if I see there's so many weaknesses, it's not worth your time. If you want to pay me, fine, pay me. But I'm going to be honest and say, because of A, B, and C, like I just outlined, you're level of recovery is incredibly low, you're probably going to be upside down paying me to recover this. It's not worth it. Anyways, that's a little bit more than what you asked for. So I think the biggest things are unregistered, if they've gone public, and then really what the statute of limitations, where we're at in the timeline.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Yeah. I was wondering how high up not registering the copyright was in your criteria.
Well, what's interesting is I think I'm a little different than a lot of other copyright attorneys out there. Many copyright attorneys will work on contingency. And so that kind of hurts me sometimes because we don't do just pure contingency. It depends on the facts, right? We do it very specific and custom because I don't want people to pay more than they need to. I want to be able to give them a good opportunity. But what I want you all to understand, if you're someone that's run into a copyright infringement situation and you go to an attorney that's like, oh, I'll do pure copyright, you don't have to pay anything. It sounds attractive, but they're not going to take you unless it's like the best facts possible because it's not worth their time. And so, whereas for me, I am kind of an in-between. It depends on the situation. We're still willing to do the work. Like if you really are hardcore, I want to get paid for this, and I agree you should be paid for it. Your facts may be kind of so-so. At the end of our initial paid strategy meeting, like you talked about, I'll give all the options and I really leave up to the client and say, what do you want to do? Photographer, what benefits you most here? I'm happy to go to the mat for you. I will take the punches. I will do what you need. Just understand the risks and understand the financial outlay.
So the same website that we're talking about has an estimator tool for calculating potential damages from infringed images. And there's a line item mentioned in that's a bad acts tax. What is that? I've never heard of it before.
It's not legal. It's something we kind of internally use when we're calculating damages. Think about it this way. If I posted a photograph, and this happens to me, it's so funny. I'm like, this is what I do. And you people take my images, but I post an image and you turn around and go use it on your Instagram. And it's mine. I haven't registered it. It could be registered, doesn't really matter. And I send you a letter and say, I want you to pay for the usage. You might say to me, well, the usage for fair market is only $5,000. Why should you only have to pay $5,000 when I had to pursue you? So the bad acts tax is kind of bridging the gap between what you should have paid had you asked permission, because that's what you would have paid had you asked me before usage, and also this idea of me having to hire an attorney, pursue you, the time and energy, and maybe the dilution of the image. Because who knows? Maybe I took that photograph. We see this with influencers and I see it with photographers as well. You might take a photograph that's exclusive. So let's just take Marriott hotels. Maybe they've hired you to photograph their wedding venue so they can put it on the wedding photography or the wedding sales page of their website. And you're in exclusive contract with them, but they allow you to, as the photographer, to post it on your own Instagram and website. Well, if a third party comes along and takes it and puts it on their Instagram, their website, Facebook, whatever it is, they're jeopardizing you as the photographer who has an exclusivity. Because who is Marriott going to look at? They're going to look at you and they're going to think, oh, did you license it out? And you're going to have to spend the time, money, and energy in order to get that photograph taken down from the third party, and also turn around and explain to Marriott what's going on. So that bad acts tax is kind of like this catch-all of all these intangibles you have to deal with.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. There's something that caught my attention. You mentioned influencers. I'm wondering, is much of your client base made up of influencers, or do you get many inquiries from influencers who might not be as business savvy as a professional photographer with more experience under the belt?
I think the answer to that is no. I get more photographers just because that's where my marketing and attraction is. I do have influencers that come to me. They typically come to me because they've had an issue. They talk to a photographer who then refers me. And so influencers is kind of on uptick. It is an area that I'm trying to target into. It's going to sound kind of weird, but I'm almost, I'm trying to like penetrate the influencer market to protect the photographers. It's like, if I can influence the influencers to know what they're doing and treat photographers well, then it will influence the photography industry positively. It's slow going. I've only got so much time.
Rachel, what specifically are you referring to when you said protecting photographers from influencers?
Good question. So one of the biggest things that we see influencers are having photographs taken by photographers, and then they're turning around and they're contracting with companies, right? To either get product or get paid. And what's happening is photographer has a contract with influencer, and typically it's only like a commercial license. It means it only really might just stop with the influencer and they don't have permissions to give unless there's been the proper negotiation. What we're really seeing is then influencers are turning around and giving away either ownership or permissions to major companies, Travelocity, United Airlines. I use tourism just because that's a huge industry that infringes a lot. But influencers are turning around and contracting or selling these photographs and basically giving away permissions or ownerships that they don't have. And so it's stealing, in a sense, not the legal term, but stealing from photographers when the influencers turn around and give to these third parties, to these companies that they're earning money from.
So they're using intellectual property for swag.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
They're basically saying, "Hey, look what I got for you. Well, let's just work out a deal." I did not know that was going on, or at least to a great degree, and that's
Huge.
That's huge. That is a huge thing.
Honestly, some of it I think just comes down to a communication thing, and it's I don't know what I don't know thing, right?
Right.
So an influencer thinks they're on the up and up when they're hiring a photographer. They're kind of looking to the photographer for guidance, but the photographer doesn't really know what the influencer's doing, so it's this stalemate. And then in the end, the photographer's mad when they see their photo on a hotel chain's website, and it's because the influencer gave it. Again, I probably give more benefit of the doubt than most lawyers do. I don't think it's nefarious behavior. I just think it's lack of knowledge.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've been in this industry, at this point, almost 18 years. And I have seen educators who stand on the big stages who will preach, oh, just give away the photographs or don't use contracts. And if I had a penny for every time they come crawling to me later because they had an issue, because they took their own advice, I wouldn't be on here right now. I'd be on an island somewhere.
And oh man, and talking about murkiness, let's talk a little bit about the 800-pound gorilla here, the AI technologies, and how that is already affecting how photographers are monetizing their images. Quite often, there's data out there that's going into other people's artwork they're clueless about, and they will never see a dime from it. This is a biggie, and I don't even know how I would approach this. What are your thoughts?
This is difficult for me, obviously.
I was waiting for that sigh.
Yeah,
it was perfect. Yeah, you just said it all. Okay, good night, everybody.
No, I mean, it's you have to understand, I'm not just an attorney. I'm also a business owner and entrepreneur, and I'm also a realist to understand that technology is changing and it happens. And at some point, you have to embrace it. You have to understand the limitations of the law. I guess I'll say this. I think AI can be good. I mean, you have to understand, I'm a lawyer. It's threatening my life too. Like I'm already being told by some clients, oh, I just went and created my contract on ChatGPT. And I told them, don't come to me and you have a problem because I'm going to charge you double. And I'm serious about it. Like I'm not joking. They thought I was joking, but I'm dead serious. I think the AI stuff. So if we're looking at it from a content perspective, the output's only as good as the input. All right. So if you're looking at doing your contracts or social media marketing, blog posts, all of that, the output's only as good as the input. Is it going to keep learning? Sure. Can it ever truly replace us? No. Do I think it's a tool? Yes. Now, I think what you're really asking about is when it comes to the actual like processing, editing, and output of photographs. This is where it becomes interesting, right? We've already had I don't even know how many years at this point, we've had Lightroom presets, we've had Photoshop presets, we've had scripts, we've had all these things. We've already had all these other mechanisms that are facilitating, expediting a workflow for us in doing different things. So the question's really going to be, how is this going to shake out from a legal standpoint? And it's funny you asked me this. I was just digging into the copyright.gov website again today to see if they had updated any of their, they do circulars every now and again, kind of just with what they're seeing. So moving forward, trying to figure out how to navigate the landscape of AI when it comes to processing and outputting our images, we have to kind of step back to what we've been talking about on this episode. Legal protection, how much do we care about protection of our photographs, and what are we willing to do? So if you're a photographer who right now believes, well, I don't really care what happens to my photographs, yada, yada, yada. I'm going to use AI. I just care about the output and make my clients happy. Go on with your bad self. But if you are one that really cares about the end product of your photographs so that you can have copyright protection, so you can enforce when someone steals your photograph and uses it, that's where it becomes trickier, because the general idea with copyright protections right now in the US is AI is a no-no. They're not going to approve and register photographs with AI. There's an exception to that. And there's a circular on the copyright.gov website that can dig into it. We're actually releasing at TheLawTog this week, so the week of June 15th, we're releasing kind of like a cliff notes on this of if you put enough human input into the AI, it may be protected. So kind of like with content, it's quality of content in, quality of content out, same with the photographs. It could be protected. So I say all that to say, I guess in my Cliff Notes fashion here is we can't avoid it. We just kind of have to figure what risk we're willing to take and what our limits of our rights will be by using it.
And now, instead of the 800-pound gorilla, the 65,000-pound whale in the world right now, generative AI. We've got a database scraped of 6 trillion images, and we're generating new photographs based on photographs that were taken by people. Mm-hmm. There is no way to trace that new image back to the DNA of the photographs that it used to render that. But it would be great to establish a new system, perhaps, of some sort of meta tag. Someone was speaking about this recently, so that you can profit from your photographs.
Even if it's only
used.
pennies from the few bits of data that they have. But the thing is, right now, there's no accountability for anything. You can go out there, it's you're basically fishing in the biggest pond in the world, and you don't have to pay any licensing fees or anything. It's just free. Mm-hmm. But it ain't free. I've been working this stuff for decades now. I don't want to personally give it anything away for free.
A corollary question would be, when OpenAI and DALL-E and Midjourney, when they announced what they had done, was there an outcry from people that sort of understood that this was, could be looked at or interpreted as a really great kind of theft of intellectual property, sort of disguised as a tool?
This is a loaded question, and I don't know if you're going to want to cut what I'm going to say next. So I have seen a trend, and this is all anecdotal. I have not developed an R&D team or anything to figure this out. There is something about in the creative industry, not just photographers, but creatives as a whole, that if I'm the photographer and my client infringes my image or someone else does, they can't do that. But, hey, look over here. Here's a free database, a free thing that I can use to improve my photography. I don't care what the terms say. I'm going to do it. It's kind of a double-edged attitude. So I say that to say, again, anecdotally, I haven't done the numbers on it. Just from what we try to track as much as possible that comes through our email, our inbox, and our Facebook group. Majority of photographers are embracing and excited for all these new AI changes, even though it could be infringing on other people's property, which in my opinion, fine, I'm going to put it out there. I don't care if you publish this. It's hypocritical. It's hypocritical because I'll have the exact same people who 2 months ago were asking me for help to how to sue someone because they stole their photograph, but they're completely okay with using these AI systems that use other people's photographs when it's untraceable.
And perhaps their own.
Yeah. But they don't see it that way. And to be fair, is it because it is such a murky area? Yes. I mean, I'll tell you what, even lawyers are over here. I just did a continuing education one yesterday on this. And even there, it was very much this, it's murky, it's a gray area. And I'm like, well, great, that helps me. That doesn't help me at all. I know it's a gray area, but I think the issue is because we're looking to the courts, which I've already talked about the law so far in the past, and they're so slow going and technology is moving so much quicker. I guess bottom line, I think we all have to look into ourselves and just consider what our principles are. I'm not trying to get all woo-woo about it, but when you're in the murkiness, just don't partake in things that you wouldn't want to have happen to you. It's the whole golden rule aspect. And until you can have a clear delineation and direction, and I can't even provide that. The Supreme Court can't provide that. The Copyright Office can't provide that. Like you read the copyright circular, I just outlined it to you. It gives this general rule, then it has all these but this, but that. It depends. And I'm like, that's the worst lawyer answer ever, but it is what we have.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. It's murky and it's difficult. And I can see people being torn in two different directions because it has that kind of glow to it, this amazing technology. And how much am I contributing to it? And how do I weigh those two things?
Well, it's interesting. You said something about accountability, and what it perked up in my mind was, let's take AI off the table for a second. Let's just do straight up copyright infringement. There's very low accountability even now without the use of AI, just simply one of us logging onto Facebook, saving a photo, taking it over to our website. Why? Because so few creatives have either taken the steps to do copyright registration or to save money or to get insurance or put tools in place and then actually pursue when the infringement happens. And so what I'm really concerned about is with the onslaught of AI, which you would think it would be beneficial for me, right? I would go from maybe 20 copyright cases a month to 200, but it's going to be even worse. And so I think we're almost going to see, I don't know, I'm not a psychologist, but I'm putting on my photographer hat. I would almost see if I'm in a position where my photographs are being used on AI, I really can't hold them accountable. I don't have the money to do it. It's going to be at just an exacerbated amount.
Well, it's interesting. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to follow this thread in this sort of kind of philosophical thing just for a little bit longer, but it speaks to the way the internet has worked out, has sort of shaped out.
Yep.
It seems like there could have been, for instance, really hard and fast meta tags embedded in image files that could trace back to who should be compensated or should, if they wanted to, claim ownership. But that was never really implemented in a strong way. Those meta tags can be erased, and so you'll never know if your wonderful picture is being used somewhere else. But there could have been. It just seems like that would have been a barrier, a friction point that would have made it a little bit slower on the uptake.
Well, and I think that's what concerns me with AI, right? We haven't even figured out this quote unquote old school. Yeah. What you just outlined. We haven't even gotten our heads around combating that. How are we going to combat the freaking robots? Unless you're really ingrained in the legal field, and even being in the legal field, it's hard to look at the nuances of this. You have what's written in the actual statute, the actual laws. Then you have the case law that interprets it. And then like what I've been mentioning is the copyright.gov, the copyright website circular. That's not controlling. That's just their opinion. So a judge is not bound by what their copyright office is putting out. And I share that just as kind of we are in a weird field and we are so pivotal for so many businesses, but I think we are in a place, and you guys bring up a really good point of we are in a place that we're going to continue to be used and abused because the law is not there, because of technology moving so quick. And we've got AI coming, the lack of knowledge by the consuming public. But then also the other piece is like what the TheLawTog is trying to fill. It's the lack of knowledge by the business owners themselves. Oftentimes they're just scared to upset a client, or they don't have the money to pursue that hotel chain that stole their photograph. And I just think it's like a perfect storm of everything at the end of the day that's going to impact our livelihoods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Definitely. So let's shift gears from AI to, you talked about case law, and there's one major copyright case that recently made big news to benefit photographers. Was the Supreme Court decision in the case of Andy Warhol versus Lynn Goldsmith. Mm-hmm. Do you think that will have any effect on the average copyright infringement case going forward?
I just think it helped to clarify it a little bit. I don't think it was like a revolutionary output the way that people are making it to be. I just think it was the names that were attached to it, the fact that it's on Supreme Court. It did a little bit of clarification, but it's not like the whole new illumination, if that makes sense. And for those listening, I guess I can give you a little synopsis of it. Basically, the idea was that minor alterations to a copyrighted work, which was what was in play here, are not transformative. So you have to have transformativeness to a work that's not yours in order for it to come out from under being copyright infringement and moving into what's called fair use. It's like a spectrum. You've got minor on one side, major on the other, and they were identifying, is it minor or major? So this is not a be all and end all, because it goes back to, you might have a case in another year from now, but the facts are completely different. Those alterations may be major, and it could be a
minor.
completely
I
different
think
outcome.
Kagan in the opposing statement, she said they were slicing the bologna a little thin there, as in minor.
Well, and it's minor alterations plus the usage, which is really, at the end of the day, what I operate from with all the copyright cases that come in my door for photographers. And actually, I think it's on that page on the website where it says, do I have a case? I'm asking all those questions for a reason, not just so I can determine whether or not I'm going to take your case. I'm pretty much probably going to always do it unless it's really imbalanced against you. But it's so when you come to me, because the very first question a photographer asks, what's my likelihood of recovery? I need to know these things, because we have to look at alterations. We have to look at how it was used, because all that factors into not just can you recover, but how much you're going to recover.
And one last just curiosity point from my perspective. You've been in this business for a long time. From what you've seen, do you notice any large trends in terms of what types of photography are producing income for people lately? Is there a large minority of not quite professional, but by professional, I mean they make more than 50% of their income for photography? Has that changed? Have you noticed any big trends, or just describing, photography business in 2023 versus photography in America professionally in 2013, let's say?
Yeah, it's a good question, because this is something that we at TheLawTog and the law firm, we stay on top of, because we want to make sure not just the hot pressing topics, but that we're speaking to the majority of people. So wedding photographers, portrait photographers. But this is also a hard question to answer, because when we're recording this, it's June 2023, and we're still kind of seeing an upswing out of pandemic, especially depending on where you live. It's a hard question to answer, because I don't know if it's just the industry changing in this way on its own, taking a life of its own, or if it's because of all these external factors or a combination. I will say, obviously, during pandemic, portrait and wedding photographers, it was very difficult. That was the bulk of our work that we did at the firm, trying to help people navigate what that looked like. I will say that I have seen consistently, and it kind of goes back to what I've said previously a couple times in this episode, we are pivotal for so many businesses out there, that commercial-based photography, so marketing, headshots, branding, all of that, are really the ones that are profiting the most. Again, this is anecdotal. I don't have statistical data, but it's based on what I see purchases of the TheLawTog. It's the infringement stuff that I see. It's also just me keeping my ear to the ground on what's going on for businesses in general. After that, for portrait photographers as a big umbrella, I think we're seeing weddings are still going to be top of that pile as far as when it comes to revenue. It just is a matter of, like with pandemic, it was pivoting away from large weddings to smaller and just being able to be agile with it. So those are really the two major areas that I'm seeing that are sustainable for photographers. It's not to say if someone's listening like, oh my God, I'm a pet photographer, but I'm doing fine. Yes, you might be. I'm just looking at the pie as a whole and the data that I have.
Cool.
Gotcha.
Great.
Rachel, thank you so much for joining us today. Obviously, there's an awful lot to be discussed here, and not all of the answers are terribly clear, because a lot of this is just evolving, and we're just watching it as it all happens and trying to figure out what reality is. Reality, that's a great word these days. All that said, any of the projects that you are working on that we might be interested in hearing about?
Oh, it's funny. I just authorized before I got on here some more stuff about AI, specifically at the TheLawTog, some more guidance and disclaimers and documents for that. But really just trying to stay the course on staying on the up and up with like the Supreme Court case we talked about, the changes in copyright law. I think the big ones just for me at the TheLawTog are contracts, copyright, and making sure y'all are legally protected. Is kind of that's been the constant over the years, and that's still what I focus on.
And what's interesting is that this is ongoing. It's not like I'm going to come up with all the answers and it's done. This is a constantly evolving situation. A lot of these are situations that evolve because, again, technology is evolving. It changes the equations. Things that we were locked into a year ago are just out the window at this point. It happens real fast. And again, it's a good reason to keep current on all these things. And speaking of which, if our listeners would like to keep current with what you are doing and what you're up to, what are some of the sites that they can go to?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Rachel Brenke, I'm the only one on the internet, so you can find me anywhere. But really, for photographers, go to thelawtog.com. And we actually just released what's called the LawTog Insiders. And so you get more intimate one-to-one interaction with me and my team. We have a group, we have an online portal. That's really where we're going to focus a lot of our efforts on, almost like reporters, like keeping you up to date on this stuff quicker. But if you're one of those, it's just like, I'm not really sure. I just need to get knowledge when I need it. Just thelawtog.com. And the community group on Facebook is huge. I have a really great admin team. We have really good membership that can help you, whether you're brand new. Don't hesitate to ask questions. That's what we're there for.
Sounds great. And all of these sites will be in the show notes for our listeners who'd like to follow up on all this. Rachel Brenke, thank you so much again for joining us today. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks. Great talking to you, Rachel.
If you are a fan of the show, but not yet a subscriber, head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts and click subscribe. You can also find this on the Explorer blog where we post photos from our guests and show notes. And please join us on Facebook at the B&H Photography Podcast group, where you can share your favorite photos and comments about the show. My name is Alan Weitz. Jill Waterman is our creative producer. Episodes are recorded, mixed, and edited by technical producer Mike Weinstein. Our executive producer is Jeremy Weiss, and our editorial director is Sean Steiner. On behalf of all of us on the good ship Lollipop, thank you oh so much for tuning in today.
Thanks to Audio-Technica for sponsoring this week's episode.